Welcome to the Expositors Podcast, where we discuss Christian worldviews, apologetics, biblical doctrine, polemics, theology, current events, law enforcement, the criminal justice system, and doing so while being biblically correct and politically incorrect. And now your host, Bill Retz.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a beautiful day today. It's raining. That should be breaking news for us Southern Californians. We need more rain, and I'm so thankful for that today. Hey, a friend that I love dearly, both of us are opponents to mandatory masks, and he recently sent me a video from a Facebook page called Shop Mask Free, Los Angeles. And the title of the video, which captured my attention, was this, quote, "Outrage. Willful ignorance is not an excuse for breaking the laws. Assault by police officers at CVS in Los Angeles, California." Well, being a law enforcement veteran myself and being an opponent to mandatory masks, obviously that was attention-getting, and that's why my friends sent it to me. But the title of it, got to be careful, because the lamestream left-wing media lies and has false narratives all the time. But us that are involved in independent or alternative media, we too must be careful that we don't put up lies or false narratives. And this video was a false narrative from the very beginning. And let me tell you why. The officers were not demonstrating, quote unquote, willful ignorance. There's no evidence that they were ignorant. It's just not there. I watched the entire 20-minute video and there was no evidence of willful ignorance. And the lady also used other names. There was a lot of name calling in the video, which is absolutely inappropriate. Now, I will say this, thankfully, that the woman never professed to be a Christian. This is not a Christian person or a Christian video. And so we should expect the world to not act as appropriately as Christians believe that we should act. But secondly, nor were these police officers, quote unquote, breaking the laws. They were not breaking the laws. It's very clear. Thirdly, nor was the woman a victim of, quote unquote, assault by police officers. These are all the many lies in just the narrative alone. And in that 20-minute video, I observed the following, including but not limited to grandstanding. She was tooting her own horn, drawing attention to herself. Woe is me, look at me, I'm the victim. And folks, you're going to lose your credibility when you grandstand with videos. And the truth is, I've even seen professing Christians do that, particularly in front of abortion mills, tooting their own horn and grandstanding. Especially when law enforcement responds, they cry and they complain about law enforcement handled the radio call. They're just trying to do their job. And so she's grandstanding and tooting her own horn. The next thing I observed that was wrong was she mocked and ridiculed the police officers. And she even said, "Hey, look at that. There's 15 of you guys on this call." That's a lie. They did not send 15 police officers to CVS Pharmacy because there was a woman in there without a mask. If you understand law enforcement, upper management and command staff have metal on their collars that identify them for their particular rank. And out of this 15 or so police officers that were there, most of them were supervision, lower management, middle, or upper management command staff. Even one commanding officer, upper management, was actually from management was actually trying to have a dialogue with her, which she would not allow. And dispatch does not send command staff to pharmacies because a person is not wearing a mask. Command staff rarely even responds to calls of a man with a gun robbing a bank. I mean, that's a patrol function. So her video was misleading. All of these people were not sent to this place via a radio call because of a woman not wearing a mask. Obviously, and there's other reasons I'm not going to reveal on this video, but by particular markings on the police car, it was clearly that they were not all from the same division within that same bureau. In other words, they were there because of a maximum deployment because of the inauguration event. And they were there because they were gathering supplies for their command post, as they were all on maximum deployment, which would include rank and file, command staff, management, supervisors, slick sleeves, all police officers, all the rank and file will be there. And that's clearly why there were so many police officers at this one location at one time. In other words, lady, they weren't all there for you. You're just not that popular. But she mocks them and ridicules them and puts them down, calling them names, which is really you're gonna lose your cause. You're not going to win the fight by acting like that. She kept yelling at them, uphold the law. Upload, if we think of internet. Uphold the law. You need to uphold the law. Well, folks, the only laws that were being broken or that were seemingly becoming broken as an inceptive verb, breaking the law, was the laws that this lady was violating herself. So the truth is, had they upheld the law of laws that were in the process of being broke, she would have been the only one that should have been arrested, because she was in the process of violating, first of all, the first law, California Penal Code 602, trespass. It's a misdemeanor to trespass. I don't care if you're there as a masked opponent. I don't care if you're there because you're drunk. I don't care if you're there because you're using profanities in the store. If a management tells you have to leave their property, you have to leave their property. They have a right to refuse service to anyone at any time. That is their right to do. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. We have to be thankful that businesses have a right to refuse service to whomever they please for whatever reasons. Now, there are some reasons that are unlawful, but telling a person that they can't come in because they're not wearing a mask is not unlawful for them to do. So she, thankfully for her, she finally obeyed the management's request and the police officer's request to leave the premises. And so that she went outside. Now she's no longer trespassing inside. Now she's outside, and she continues her tirade. Another thing that she mentioned in the title of this video, that the police officers quote unquote assaulted her. When you watch the video, which is provided in the description field, one police officer, and by the way, they were actually in compliance with their department policy. The use of force, or the contingency ladder, or the use of force, the ladder of force, is that police officers would start off minimally with uniform presence, command presence, verbalization, and then firm grip. They didn't even use a firm grip. They simply used a gentle nudge and kind of gently nudged her to get her to leave the store. That's absolutely appropriate. That is not an assault. To say that's an assault, you're either ignorant or you're a liar. One of the two, one or the other. And see, this is another reason why we have so many people hating police officers now, because people are lying about police officers by making videos like this with their false narratives. You should watch the comments and read some of the comments under here. Just a bunch of cop haters. And this woman, all she does is add fuel to the fire of cop hating. Another violation of the law that she was an inceptive verb in the process of committing was 148 of the California Penal Code. It's against the law to delay, interfere, or delay a police officer's the lawful police officers of a police officer. In this case, they were obviously handcuffing a person outside the store once she exited the store, and evidently somebody had put a mask on this person when they handcuffed him and were putting him in a police car. And she's yelling, why is he wearing handcuffs? Why do you make him wear a mask? Why are you arresting him? Why are you this? Why are you that? And lady, it's none of your business. It's simply none of your business why the Los Angeles Police Department is taking another person into custody. It's none of your business. And sadly, the reason why they were taking this person into custody, because of her inquiring, was actually put on video and now is on the internet for everybody to see, which quite frankly is embarrassing for that person. So all she did was harm his reputation by her demanding why he was quote unquote being so-called arrested. So trespassing and interfering and delaying are the only things that the officers were not upholding the law. Those were the laws that they were not upholding, because they could have arrested her. For sure, the 148, but since she left the store after many demands, she no longer became a trespasser. I also need to say this. When a police officer receives a complaint from a citizen of trespass on their property, and if a citizen demands a private person's arrest, the citizen signs a private person's or private citizen's arrest form. Once the police officer receives that demand and that signature, the law states the officer shall arrest that person and transport them away under a private citizen's person's arrest. And if the officers, in California at least, if they do not comply to that citizen's demand of a citizen's arrest, the police officer is committing a law themselves. It's actually a wobbler. They're committing either a misdemeanor / felony by not taking that person into custody. So oftentimes the officer has no choice. And in this case, had the woman refused to leave, which she finally complied after multiple demands, the misdemeanor was actually being committed in the presence of the police officers. Therefore, they wouldn't even need a private person's signature. They could have just taken her right there and named CVC as the victim based on their own observations, but they still did not arrest her. So I think that the officers did a pretty darn good job. You know, where the officers failed, the management asked them while they were already at the store, hey, tell that lady to please put a mask on. It would have been better for the police officers to say, no, I'm not going to demand her to wear a mask because it is not law. The police officers would have been better. Number one, the police officers are wearing masks themselves, which is, I think it's cowardly, to be honest with you. Law enforcement's changed. The LAPD wearing masks during a flu epidemic, basically. But that's another podcast. Though I am an opponent of mandatory masks, I also believe it's reasonable for individual places of business to actually require masks for entry. That's their right. They have a right to require masks. Yesterday, I took my wife to a restaurant. We had a beautiful cheeseburger, bacon, top sirloin beef, and tri-tip, sliced tri-tip in this cheeseburger. And what's cool, they had a sign on the door that I do agree with that said, the old sign, no shirt, no shoes, no services. That's right on. They have a right to refuse service for anybody that's not wearing a shirt or shoes in a place where you're going to sit down and eat. But they didn't have a no mask, no entry sign, and I appreciate that. Another thing I noticed on the sign was actually signage addressed to Governor Gavin Newsom, basically telling Governor Gavin Newsom that he wasn't welcome in their restaurant because of his tyrannical mandatory mask policies. And lo and behold, county health department officials came in while we were there. I actually videotaped it from a Facebook page. Came in, read the sign on the door, and did a thorough investigation of this place. As we prayed for our meal, giving thanks, we actually prayed for this restaurant that they would not endure heavy fines. But anyways, we have a choice to go to a restaurant. Had they had a sign that says no masks, no entry, or if they told us once we came in, you can't sit down and eat without a mask, we would have simply left and gone to another restaurant. It's their choice, and it's our choice. But when people start becoming unwise, unreasonable, and belligerent, like this woman was in this video, that, my friends, is counterproductive. And that's why I'm making this video. Let's be reasonable and responsible with how we oppose this tyrannical mask tyranny. It reminds me of the open carry advocates 10 years ago when there was advocates for open carry, to be able to carry a gun openly in California, especially. I remember my office on State Street in downtown Redlands on State Street, all these people walking along the streets wearing firearms exposed on their hips in a holster or strapped on their shoulders with a shoulder harness. And I knew what they were doing, but I asked them, I wish I had it videotaped, why are you guys doing this? Because we're open carry advocates. We're protesting that we can open carry our firearms. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous because the law already states you can. So why would you protest for a law that already exists? Oh, you're a liberal. You're against. No, I'm not a liberal. I'm so conservative I can't even be a Republican anymore. I'm very much for the Second Amendment. But what you're doing is counterproductive. And I told these guys in person, and I also debated them on the internet, that you guys one day are going to literally, pun intended, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. And that's exactly what happened. Because of their irresponsible activism and their irresponsible so-called love for the Second Amendment, state assembly and state Senate in California penned a new piece of legislation making it illegal to carry a firearm that's unloaded and exposed. And naturally so, our liberal Democrat governor signed it into law. So literally, it backfired on them. They shot themselves in the foot, and it backfired on them. They actually created more legislation against the Second Amendment. And I can see mask opponents doing the same thing. Right now, folks, we have at the federal level, of course at state level too in California almost always, but right now in the feds we have a Democrat House of Representatives, a Democrat U.S. Senate, and a Democratic White House. Don't you realize how easy it would be for them to pin in an actual law that states you must wear a mask when they demand it? A law that states that they have the authority to say you've got to wear a mask, just like they have the authority to implement curfew during particular times or seasons. And these irresponsible opponents of masks, which I am an opponent of masks, but these irresponsible activists are going to create laws that are going to backfire and hurt us. And that's the reason why I'm making this video. I'm a huge advocate of the Second Amendment, as I said, but these protesters shot us all in the foot and it backfired on us. And now we have even more laws against carrying unloaded firearms in California. I want to talk a little bit about what are these people using to defend their right to enter a restaurant or a place of business without a mask. Well, they're actually using California Civil Code 51. I've seen this on multiple Facebook friends' walls as they're arguing in defense. They're stating that these places of business are violating the law by making you wear a mask, and they can actually get sued for discrimination. And I strongly disagree with that position, and let me tell you why. First of all, let me read you the legal definition in summary of California Civil Code 51. It states, all persons within the jurisdiction of this state are free and equal, and no matter what their sex, race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, disability, or medical condition are entitled to the full and equal accommodations, advantages, facilities, privileges, or services in all business establishments of every kind whatsoever. Many mask opponents are using this section as a threat, as they threaten people. I'm going to sue you based on California Civil Code 51 if you do not let me enter your building or if you make me wear a mask while I do come in. They're claiming the owners are violating this statute. But my dear friends, that's not the case. That is a wrong application of the law. It's the wrong use or application of this Civil Code Section 51. Some Christians are complaining, or some professing Christians are claiming that this is violating the Religious Protection Clause portion of this code. Others are saying it's that they have a medical exemption, and therefore these companies are violating their medical disabilities and their religion. And that is an exaggeration. Because of my COPD, previous heart attack, cardiac arrests over the last few years, being pacemaker reliant, I have no doubt that I can claim a medical exemption. But the truth is, folks, I also know that if I were to wear a mask, I can make an entire podcast while making a mask. So we've got to be careful that we're not lying while defending our so-called rights to not, or freedoms to not wear a mask. See, the purpose of the Civil Code is to protect people from willful and intentional. That's the elements of this crime, or the elements of violating the Civil Code, is it to protect them against the willful, intentional discrimination. If I walk into a store and they say, sir, you got to wear a mask, they have no idea that I'm a religious person. Therefore, they're not violating my religious rights. If I walk into a store and say, I am not going to wear a mask, but they tell me I've got to wear a mask, there's no evidence there that they are intentionally and willfully discriminating against me because I have a heart condition, or however that works out. You see my point, what I'm trying to get across? There's no way in the world that I can know that they know that I'm a Christian, and that I can know and prove in a court of law. Now, if a person walks in with an oxygen tank and a full oxygen mask on their face, and the oxygen tank is on a dolly, and they're walking in struggling for breath, and they've got an oxygen mask not just in their nostrils but on their whole entire face, I think it's reasonable to say that they knew that person had a medical condition. and they probably would win a lawsuit against that establishment for this case. But generally speaking, nobody's going to be able to prove that they are violating your religion, in my case, Christianity, or my medical disabilities. Yeah, mental, that's a whole nother podcast. As one legal source wrote, and I quote, Section 51 sought to obtain equality for its citizens by prescribing discrimination, commanding that public places admit all citizens equally, and allowing aggrieved plaintiffs to recover damages to compensate for the harm. Furthermore, let me give you a reasonable purpose and example of the Civil Code. This is reasonable, a reasonable application of this law. Imagine a person handicapped parks in front of CVC Pharmacy, and they use the handicap stall, they park there, they get out, but they're paraplegic. They have to use a wheelchair just to transfer themselves from the driver's seat to a wheelchair. And the manager says, no, I'm not going to let you use the ramp, the handicap ramp, to enter the store because you're in a wheelchair. Or I'm not going to let you enter the store because you're in a wheelchair and you're going to be in people's ways. That's clearly a violation. That's clearly admitted willful, intentional discrimination based on medical disabilities. Then you would have a right application of the statute. Then you would have a surefire lawsuit. They would probably settle out of lawsuit because they would fear of what a California jury would do to that terrible company. Again, though I'm against mandatory masks, here's why I believe that businesses should be able to, and must have the right to refuse service to anyone. Just like the restaurant yesterday that had a sign, we refuse to the right to serve anybody without a shirt or shoes. Remember Jack Phillips, the Christian baker in Colorado? Two homosexual men entered his place of business, and they wanted a cake made for their sodomite wedding. And rightfully so, and biblically so, Jack Phillips refused service. He refused to make a cake for a homosexual wedding. They sued him. He lost just about everything that man, Jack Phillips, ever had. But thankfully, the United States Supreme Court listened to his case, and they rendered a decision of 7-2 in favor of Jack Phillips, that he did not discriminate against those men because of their gender or their homosexual sins, that he actually was upholding his Christian conscience, upholding his biblical convictions to not acquiesce to these sodomites' sins. And they actually ruled in favor, 7-2 in favor of Jack Phillips, the Christian baker. You see, that's why we ought to be able to be thankful that these businesses can lawfully reserve the right to refuse service to anybody that they choose to. We should never say a business does not have a right to refuse your entry to enter a business. So the moral of the story is, be careful how we apply this law or this particular California Civil Code, and make sure that we're not lying about our own so-called exemptions. Personally, the best case I've seen for a Christian to not wear a mask, the best biblical case to defend me for not wearing a mask, is a pastor named Matt Tringwala. I think it's Tringwala. I'll put the link in the description field. And he basically made a pretty good case that a mask for a Christian is violating the 9th commandment. It's bearing false witness. Watch that video. I don't agree with his tone, but I agree with his message, and that's what I use as a defense, is it bears false witness. As a Christian, I'm not going to help spread a lie. And lastly, if a place of business tells you that you cannot enter without a mask, as I go to places all the time that tell me I can't wear a mask, simply go somewhere else. I mean, it's not going to do any good to demand your rights. Just go somewhere else. If all of us would shop somewhere else, these places would lose money, and they would eventually realize, hey, I think maybe we ought to not listen to our governor in this regard because we're losing business. So many people have been shut down by the governor because they're afraid to go against the governor or their local mayors. For instance, I used to shop at Bass Pro Shop. I'm one of their VIP customers. Actually, I have a VIP membership card. They're supposed to treat you as a VIP once you're a VIP. and they rudely told me to leave because I was shopping about 7 weeks ago without a mask. And I didn't sit there and demand my rights to shop without a mask. I understand what's going on, so I simply took my products that I had in my hand, went to the register, paid for them, and left, and made a video about it, and never came back. I simply take my money somewhere else. Now I buy my fishing gear, including a rod and reel that I bought recently from TackleDirect.com. And if we would do more of that, I'd prefer to shop at a brick and mortar building and buy my fishing equipment, but there's not one in my area that actually will let you in without a mask. Well, then I'll buy online, and you guys can lose my business. So let's do that, folks. Let's protest by going somewhere else and spending your money at places that actually will not till you and make you wear a face diaper. Give someone else your hard-earned money. They deserve it. And that's about it, folks. I'm interested in your comments. Feel free to render your comments. Profanity is not appreciated. It will be omitted because you do not have a First Amendment right to use profanity on my YouTube channel. So y'all have a good day. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Expositors Podcast. If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and share it with others. Until the next episode.